Okay, welcome everyone to DNA's Lunch and Learn series for April 2019. Today we're going to be talking about mobile solutions to improve sales and warehouse automation in Sage 300, focusing on the AutoSimply mobile products. And I'm Will Booth from DNA Business Management Solutions. We are your provider of Sage 300 and add-on solutions such as AutoSimply. And today I have the great pleasure of Rob Lavery joining us from Rob Lavery and Associates. Rob is the representative for AutoSimply software in North America. He has a broad range of experience working with Sage 300 for more years than we can all count, probably. He's worked for Sage. He's been an implementer, and as long as I've known him, he's been representing the key add-on solutions to Sage 300 that we have at probably almost all of our clients, at least one, if not many. And as I said today, we want to show some new features from AutoSimply, who has a manufacturing solution, but also today we're going to just be talking about the warehouse operations and sales anywhere products. So I'm recording this session. Please put your questions in the chat window. We'll answer them at the end, but everybody's going to be on mute so that there's no feedback in the demonstration. So over to you, Rob.
All right. Thank you so much, Will. You can just share the screen.
I will do that right now. Thank you. I'll just change the presenter here. Nope. There we go. Pick the right person. There we go.
All right. Thank you very much. And
I
thank
can
you,
see
everyone.
your screen too. It's very good.
All right. Perfect. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. We appreciate your time very much, and we hope that you'll learn something of value for the time invested. So as Will mentioned, we're going to be reviewing the AutoSimply barcode solutions for Sage 300, as well as the new Sales Anywhere mobile sales solution. And really, when we talk about barcode solutions, this is not a traditional barcode solution to what you might have come to expect, where it requires you to use certain scanning units in order to be able to read barcodes, whether they be on items themselves or simply on documents that you generate from Sage 300. Because essentially a barcode is very simple technology that you can install as a different font within Crystal reports to add barcodes to virtually any field within Sage 300. And just as barcodes are a very generic type of technology that can be deployed in multiple ways, when we designed the AutoSimply barcode solution, we wanted to remove any restrictions that have been generally part of the traditional barcode solutions that have been available for Sage 300 and ACPAC prior to that. So what we came up with was the concept of a different user interface, which is distinct from the Sage 300 desktop user interface, but it also allows you to run the barcode system on any type of device that you might wish to use. So rather than defining just barcode scanning units as possible hardware options, you could also run this on a notebook computer, which is what I'll be demonstrating today, but you could also run it on a tablet, either a Windows tablet or an Android, and now an Apple or iOS tablet, as well as a smartphone device. Now, typically when people ask us about smartphone devices, we let them know that yes, you can certainly run the application on a smartphone, but for most industrial-based applications, the battery life on a smartphone is not sufficient. So just a warning to you that you can use a smartphone, but for all intents and purposes, you're most likely going to want some sort of a dedicated device. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail when we look at some hardware options. But with the separate user interface, we integrate directly into Sage 300 as a Wi-Fi service. So much like you would access the internet through an internet connection, which is Wi-Fi enabled, we use the same type of integration when we talk about linking barcode users to Sage 300. So what that means from a practical standpoint is that all we really need to do is to be able to see an IP address for the server where Sage 300 is installed. And then we'll be able to access Sage 300 data in real time via the Barcode user licenses. So we need one LAN pack license in order to connect as many Barcode users as you wish. So that's why you see the Sage 300 user ID noted here on the web service configuration screen. So we will need one dedicated LAN pack license from Sage 300, but then all of the other Barcode users will be logging into Sage 300 using a Barcode license, which is much less expensive than a traditional LAN pack user license in Sage 300. And what this will allow them to do is, based on security settings that you define, provide access to some of the traditional transactions that you would normally conduct within the back office of Sage 300. So for example, today we'll show you how you would do a PO receipt entry from the warehouse or from some remote location, but it will update that receipt information in real time directly into Sage 300 without any importing or exporting of the data. Likewise, for things like an OE shipment or a PO return or your physical stock counts, all of these are examples of transactions that can be modified and updated directly from a Barcode or a notebook computer or any type of handheld device, because we're connected directly with Sage 300. Will mentioned that AutoSimply has traditionally been known for their manufacturing suite, which allows you to generate manufacturing orders in a make-to-stock or make-to-order environment. It also has a shop floor control component for capturing labor costs and labor time on the shop floor. We're not going to be addressing that in today's presentation, but just so you know, that is the flagship solution for AutoSimply. But we've added in the Barcode capability based on feedback from our customers and the business partners who represent Sage 300 globally. So just to reiterate, you would set up a user ID with a password and then define the access rights that you want to give to that user based on the transactions you would like them to record in the Barcode system. And then the Barcode desktop, as we've already seen, will become available to them. They'll be able to log into that system. If you're running more than one Sage 300 company database, you'll be able to look and see at the list of all the different Sage 300 companies running on that particular server, and then you'll be able to log in and start recording transactions. So as an example, we'll use the purchase order as one of the sample transactions. So this would be using the AutoSimply for purchase orders. Note that there's also OE for OE shipments and OE returns. We have a module called IC Basic, which incorporates the IC stock count capabilities, as well as IC transfer, receipt transfer, and internal usage if you're consuming some of your own inventory. To that, we've also added an IC Extended module, where you can incorporate IC receipt if you're not using the purchase order module, or IC shipment if you're not using the OE module. Also, for those people that use the bill of material feature in inventory control, you can do IC assembly and disassembly. There's the manufacturing, the shop floor control, and there's also an inquiry capability if you want to do stock inquiries, pending receipts, pending shipments, or if you're tracking inventory using lot numbers and serial numbers, you can also do inquiries based on those criteria. So coming back to the operations suite, we're going to do a PO receipt, but to highlight the integration and how the process would work on a day-to-day basis, I'm going to create a new purchase order in the system. And this will highlight for you the ability to record a receipt in the warehouse in real time, so that you're not having to move paper from the back office to the warehouse and then back from the warehouse into the office. So let's choose a vendor. I'll choose 1200. And I'm going to, I'll just call this a DNA AutoSimply barcode example using PO. And I'll put that in the reference field as well to highlight the fact that you can record information in Sage 300 that will then become visible within the barcode system. And I'm just using standard items. I could use lot or serial tracked items, but for this example, I'll just keep it simple. And let's say we're ordering a quantity of 25, and we'll go ahead and post this as a transaction in Sage 300. So I've generated purchase order 68. I won't print this off, but I'll just record that as a PO. Now, typically what you would do then is wait for these items to be received into your warehouse. Somebody would record that receipt manually in the warehouse and then have to produce some sort of documentation or notification for someone in the back office in Sage 300 to then come into the receipt entry screen and record the receipt against purchase order 68. So if we look at that, we would be creating the next available receipt number, 130, against purchase order 68, and then post that receipt to acknowledge that we've now received these goods in our warehouse and they should be available for fulfilling sales orders. The problem with that process is that there's a lag time typically between the time goods are received in the warehouse and the time those quantities get updated into inventory control and purchase orders. So what we want to do by incorporating the barcode system is to record the activity on the barcode system as close to the source as possible, which is in the warehouse. So what I would do using AutoSimply barcode is I would come to the PO receipt entry screen, and I could either scan the PO number on a document if we barcoded the PO number on a document, or I could simply search for the most recent POs that have been recorded in Sage 300. And there's PO 68 that we just recorded a few minutes ago. And it knows that there's reference information that needs to be recorded, so that's visible on the handheld device. And by clicking on the detail button, it will highlight the list of items that are on that purchase order. Now in our case, we're only showing the one item, but if I had multiple lines on the PO, you would see multiple lines on the screen as well. And then as I scan each item, excuse me, it would open up the screen to record the unit of measure. So I could be scanning items by each's individual items, or I could be scanning by a case or a skid, and it would know to translate that based on the conversion unit of measure to the lowest stocking unit denominated within inventory control. It knows the quantity that's on the PO, and I've got a receive quantity that I now have to record in the system. Now this yellow box on the right-hand side of the screen means that I'm in entry mode, which means I could simply enter the quantity. In a lot of cases, you'll want to use what we call the scan mode, which is now a green box with an S in it. And this then forces the operator to actually scan the quantity. So you would either scan the units based on a barcode, or you would have a sheet with the PO information that you would scan off of, which would denote the quantity that was on that PO. So you have two different entry modes to record the transaction within the barcode system. For demonstration purposes, I'm just going to enter that number. Now we often at this point get the question, what if I receive more than what's on the PO? And originally when we first issued the software for the AutoSimply barcode, we did not allow you to receive more than what was on the original PO, because we felt these types of decisions are back office finance decisions, not decisions that should be made in the warehouse. But based on customer feedback, we've relented on that and said, okay, then what we will do is we'll allow you to set a parameter by which you will allow a certain percentage overage. So in other words, you might say we'll allow up to 10% more than what's on the PO and allow you to scan up to that number. But anything more than that is going to need some sort of an override, a manual executive decision to allow more than what's allowed normally in the Sage 300 PO module. So I've recorded 25. I'm going to say OK. Now what you're also going to see now is a bin number pop up. And the reason for that is because we're also integrated with the ORCID bin tracking module. This is not a requirement. It's just simply the way my company's been set up for this demonstration. So what we're looking at is the ability to record not just the fact that the item's been received into IC location number 1, but the fact that it's a specific bin number, which could represent a certain aisle in the warehouse or a certain shelf or a certain area, a cage, whatever you might be using in your warehouse. And what we're going to record on the receipt is a quantity of 25 against the current quantity that's been stocked in this bin and the total quantity that's been recorded in inventory control. So I just wanted to highlight for you very quickly so that you'll understand when we post and record the bin transaction, which is something else that I would scan at this point, we'll record the quantity of 25 and the system will actually generate 2 transactions in Sage 300. One will be a bin transfer for the put away of these 25 items into bin A010101, and the other will be the transaction to record the PO receipt in the purchase orders module. Now it's possible to do a review to make sure that I've got the right item, the right quantity, the right bin. I'm okay with all of that, so I can go ahead and post. And it gives me one more choice to say, are you sure? And when you say yes, it goes ahead and processes the PO receipt. So 2 entries will be recorded, as I said. One is a PO receipt, which is receipt number 130, and a bin transfer for the put away BT95. So if we start with bin tracking, since that's where we left off, if we go to the bin transfer screen and pick up the last bin transfer entry right here, you'll see BT95 has been recorded as a purchase order receipt, was the source document. Receipt number 130 was a put away of this item for a quantity of 25 against the bin that we recorded on the handheld device. So that's if you're using bin tracking. If you're not using bin tracking, then we have a simple PO receipt transaction that's been recorded in Sage 300 purchase orders to acknowledge the receipt of goods against the original PO number 68. So as I mentioned, we should see receipt 130 against vendor 1200 for PO 68, and the quantity of 25 has been received. So there's no import-export, there's no rekeying of any data. We simply post from the handheld unit in the warehouse, and it updates Sage 300 automatically in real time. So this should streamline the process of receiving goods, eliminate any lag time so that information is always as current and up-to-date as possible, and you have more accurate information about the quantities that are actually sitting in the warehouse rather than some items sitting on skids and they're not properly recorded in Sage 300, so you can't get a full view of all the items available to fulfill sales orders in the system. And God forbid you should receive a customer request and realize that you could have fulfilled it, but because you didn't know it was in the warehouse, you had to decline that sales order. So that's on the purchasing side. I could certainly show you on the OE side, but rather than do that, I think what I'd prefer to do is show you the stock count, which is part of your IC physical inventory. Now, as you're probably aware, you can generate inventory worksheets against locations within Sage 300, and then that inventory worksheet is produced for people to go out into the warehouse and start recording the actual quantities counted in the warehouse. And typically they're manually recording by writing down the quantities counted and then handing those inventory worksheets back in for someone to rekey or key that information into Sage 300. And it updates what we call the physical inventory quantities. What I'd like to suggest in this case is if we use AutoSimply Barcode, then as we're doing our counts and recording these counts, we can update them directly from the warehouse floor as we're doing the counts. So you can see that there's a previous count here for the top 3 items of 1218, 120, and 128. So if I were to go back to my barcode system, and in this case, look at my IC stock count, I can actually see my physical inventory quantities by location without having to go into Sage 300. And I'll just look at the detail. We won't worry about the bins at this point. So you can see the quantity counted of 1218 is what we show in the barcode system, and 120 and 128 and so on. Now, if for some reason I needed to go back into the warehouse and verify the count, I can still come in and I can verify for each of these items what my physical count was. So let's say for this first item, we actually discovered that the correct count was 1220, not 1218. So I could record that. And then on the second item, we had a quantity of 120, but let's say it was actually 125. And we record that amount. And then on the last item, we want to verify that it was actually 128, and that's what we discovered, was that it was actually 128, and we say okay. And again, we can review our updated counts for those top 3 items, and if we're okay, then we can go ahead and post. Now what happens when we post is that it'll say, would you like to post to the stock count? Yes. And then it's going to ask us, do you want to add the quantity that you've just recorded, or do we want to override the quantity that's been counted? If we had multiple people counting the same item in the warehouse, then you would want to be adding to get a cumulative total for the same item in multiple locations in your warehouse. In our case, we're confident that we've counted all the items in the warehouse, and I want to update the previously counted amount, so I'm going to override. And what will happen is the posting updates these quantities. So when I refresh the screen, and what I'll do to refresh is I'll close and then open the physical inventory quantities again, you'll see that the quantity counted has been updated from 1218 to 1220, from 120 to 125, and the 128 was verified. And the quantity variance will be shown between what's on hand in inventory control and the quantity that we counted. So you can see there's a negative variance of 14 there and a positive variance of 2 for that item. So again, very quickly, directly from the shop floor, as I counted the items and posted, I'm updating my inventory quantities directly in Sage 300 without any lag time between the process being conducted in the warehouse and the information being updated for accounting and finance purposes. So very simple example of how we update the physical inventory quantities. But again, that's the power of having the real-time integration between a handheld, remote, or mobile device in the warehouse versus having to manually record these transactions and then move paper around and eventually get it rekeyed into the system. So that's sort of a high-level overview of what we call AutoSimply Barcode for operations. And it's operations because we're covering off the operations modules in Sage 300, notably the order entry, inventory control, and purchase orders. But if you have ORCID bin tracking, then we can also incorporate bin tracking as well. Now, because we developed the application as a separate interface, really a separate application that integrates to Sage 300 as a Wi-Fi service, we also got requests from people who said, well, because we now have remote or mobile access to Sage 300, why can't we also process sales transactions? Which is why AutoSimply came up with the notion of developing an application called Sales Anywhere. Sales Anywhere is very similar in concept and application with the barcode, except in this case now, we're not recording an operational transaction from the warehouse. We're actually recording sales transactions either as an accounts receivable invoice or a sales order in order entry, And likewise, we can also do OE shipments, OE invoices, and OE payments. So the way this works is that when we want to incorporate a sales transaction, we would open up a separate interface. And just as we did with the barcode system, we would open up to see the information that's available to us. Now, depending on the option we choose, we can have accounts receivable or order entry sales transactions. And if we choose the sales button and we're looking at order entry, then what we can do is actually create a sales transaction in Sage 300. So again, to highlight the integration, what I'm going to do is go over to order entry and identify what the last sales order number is within Sage 300. And then we'll verify that we're generating the next available sales order number. So order number 99 was the last sales order in Sage 300. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and create a new sales order using Sales Anywhere. So you notice that it's a new sale, so I'm going to be able to generate an order, a shipment, and an invoice. Or I could say, well, I don't need to create the invoice, that's an accounting function. I'm going to create the order and then ship it. Or I may just be recording orders as part of the system. So you can decide at what point you want to record these transactions. And then you also have the ability, of course, to log in and see which customers you would like to make a purchase, a sales transaction for, or it could be just a straight cash transaction. It could be just a sales with recorded transactions. And if you want to search, then we can then pick up the item. And so we're really giving you the power to do mobile sales using the barcode application, but now tying it into a transaction that you would normally see recorded within Sage 300 back office. But in this case now, we're recording it as an order within sales order entry, but through a mobile device. And we've got the ability then to specify that I want an order, a shipment, or an invoice. And the item number, again, I can just do a search and I'll pick up that item. And as you're recording, you can determine the quantity. Whenever you see a blue hot link, it gives you the ability to open up information about that item from Sage 300. So I could see what's available in my inventory, what's on hand, what's on purchase order, what's on sales order. So I've got visibility into information within Sage 300 because I am connected directly into the system. Let's say we're going to order a quantity of 10 items. It will update the quantity, update the extended total, and then I can go ahead and post. Now in this case, it's going to generate all three documents, an order, shipment, and invoice. And because I've got an invoice, I'll also be able to take a payment. So we'll just go ahead and let this post. It will generate the order, shipment, and invoice number and present the invoice number to me within the system. And there's invoice 78. So now if I were to go back into Sage 300 and go to the invoice entry, my last invoice will be invoice 78, and it will have an associated shipment number and order number. So there's invoice 78, shipment 97 for the quantity for this item of 10 that was invoiced, okay? And the shipment 97 will revert back to a specific order. So we'll open up the shipment entry just to show you that it's all been recorded automatically within Sage 300. There's shipment 97. for invoice 78 and order 100, which is what we said would be the next available order number. So all three documents were recorded simultaneously in Sage 300 when we recorded the sales transaction in Sales Anywhere. Now you're able to print off a copy of the invoice. So if you had a remote printer, you'd be able to generate a slip or an invoice form that you could then give to the client right then and there. And if you wanted to, you could accept a payment. Now, we're not a merchant account, so you would need some sort of a device to link you into a merchant account to do a credit card clearing, or you could receive a check for the amount and provide a receipt and post that as a payment against the order and the invoice in the system. So it generates the payment entry and records that as part of Sage 300 as well. So very quickly and very easily, we're able to record a new sale, ship it, invoice it, print off a copy, and accept payment. So this might be handy at a trade show floor or some other type of remote scenario, or a delivery truck, for instance. Now, in the case of a delivery truck, what we might find is that the sales order has been recorded in Sage 300, but we need to ship an invoice from a delivery truck or vehicle. In that case, rather than creating a new sale, we would go to the document inquiry and pick up an existing sales order in Sage 300 and then record the shipment entry. So if we do a search, we've got all these different orders that have been recorded in the system, and you can see all of them that haven't been shipped out yet. So let's choose this one here, and let's see if we can. Okay, so it's actually gone ahead. It's done. Yeah, this one's already been shipped, unfortunately. So let me see if I can find an order that hasn't been shipped. And then I'll be able to record that shipment as part of Sales Anywhere. So that's against order 100, order 99, 98, 97, 95. Okay, so it looks like 96 is still available. So let's do order 96 this time. And we'll search and go down to 96 and pick up this order. And now you can see I can do the shipment, or I could do the shipment and the invoice. So let's go ahead and post, and it will generate the shipment and invoice. And the last invoice was 78, so this would be presumably invoice 79. So there's invoice 79, and the shipment entry will be recorded. So in this case, rather than creating a new sales order, I'm picking up an existing sales order and being able to ship an invoice off of a truck or delivery vehicle for that customer. And then again, we could print off a copy, accept payment. We could even do a reorder and say this customer would like to do an automatic reorder right now. And we could go ahead and click on reorder and say, which documents do you want to create? Just the order and the shipment, or all three documents. So it's a nice additional feature that you've got with the Sales Anywhere solution. So I'll close that down. And there is also a separate sales and payment inquiry function, much like we saw with the inquiry capability in the Barcode for operations. You've also got an inquiry by date where you can list all of the different transactions that have been created by yourself for certain customers and payments that have been recorded against those sales. But that's essentially what Sales Anywhere is all about, giving remote people access to sales and inventory information and being able to record either a sales order, a shipment, an invoice, or a combination of all three within order entry or invoices within accounts receivable. So, Will, in the interests of time and being able to address some questions, I did see a question come up from Rox about serial and lot tracking. So,
All right.
is that a question where she'd like to see me actually process something with lots and serials?
Let me just see here. If she says
Yes.
yes.
Okay. So Rox has confirmed. Okay. So let's do that. Let's jump back into inventory barcode. And in this case, if it's okay, I'll just do a purchase order again, if that's all right. And this time I'll use do you prefer a lot number or a serial number? Does it make any difference to you, Rox? Serial number. Okay, so let's choose an item that's serialized. So in the sample data for Sage 300, we have the different account sets. So what I'm going to do is choose a serialized number here. And I'm going to receive it into location 1, and let's do a order quantity. Let's say 5. And I'll go ahead and post that. So PO69 has been created, and now we'll go ahead and receive against that. So we're going to go to barcode operations and log into that company. Now what you'll see with the serial is that just like you can in Sage 300, you'll determine whether you're going to auto assign the serial number or whether you're going to enter the serial number. And of course, if the barcodes are already on the item, then you could scan the barcode that includes a serial number if you want to do that. I didn't get into the different types of formats other than the basic ones, so I'll come back to that in just a minute after we've recorded this transaction. So it's a quantity of 5 again, much like we saw on the previous example. I'm going to record the quantity of 5, and now we're going to get 2 additional screens. We have the bin tracking screen because I've integrated the system into bin tracking, and we're going to receive the quantity of 5. But because it's a serialized item as well, we also get the serial screen popping up. So this happens automatically based on the nature of the item. When we chose an item that wasn't serialized, this screen did not happen. For always shipping in the warehouse, can we confirm any tracking number? Yes, you can, and I can elaborate on that in just a few minutes. So the next serial would be something that you would either scan because the item comes with a serial number associated with it, and if it's barcoded, we can scan that. If not, we could either manually enter it or auto-generate. If we auto-generate, much like you do in standard Sage 300 receipt, it will auto-generate the next available serial numbers. So we chose 5 items, we have 5 serial numbers, so we can now add that and add the bin entry and then do a review, and it will show me the item, the quantity, the bin that we're putting it in this case, and the serials that were applied. And just as you would normally now, you would go ahead and post, and in our case it's going to do again both the PO receipt and the bin transfer. So support for serial and lot tracking is built into the system, and if we look at receipt 131, we'll skip the bin transfer 98 since we've already talked about that. But if I come into the receipt entry, number 131 is the last one that was just created. We'll see the items have been properly recorded in Sage 300. So I've got my quantity of 5, and if I open up the column, you'll see the 5 serial numbers have been applied as well. So rather than having to go in through Sage 300, we've been able to record the quantity with the serials, either auto-generated or manually applied based on how these items get serialized. Okay, so does that answer your question, Rox? Or did you have a follow-up question before we move along? Okay, I guess we answered the question. So Will, there was a question about tracking. I
Yeah,
wonder
it
if there's
said
anything else.
um, the one the one on OE shipping you saw, right?
Mm-hmm.
Roxanne said I want to see the follow up with the physical inventory and serial number.
Okay, so now we need to do a physical count for that item. So
And I did unmute people if anybody wants to come on. I did unmute. It's just while we were going through it. I didn't want a lot of chatter and that sort of thing. So if anybody does want to ask the questions, some people may have not put in their audio pin and that sort of thing. So let me know if you've got a problem talking, or just put it in the chat window and we'll go through it. We got lots of time. We've got another 15 minutes. Sometimes you kind of have to see these things.
this is the unit here, Rox. So we have a quantity counted of 166, 166, and there's serials applied to that. So that's the A1900-B is what we're going to look at in the physical stock count. So I'll log out of sales anywhere and say okay, and we'll go back into barcode operation into the menu here and do our physical stock count. And it's location 1 that we're looking at. Don't worry about the bin. Oops, sorry, the wrong item, sorry. I want to look at location 1 and then look at the detail. And the item number was A1900B, which was the answering machine. Now there was 166, so let's say there's, so when you said the follow-up on the serial item, wasn't sure if there's a discrepancy here. So let's say we counted 170 and we want to say, okay, barcode does not, without bin. Interesting. Because of the way this company's set up, I can't record the quantity on a serialized item because it's not also recording the bin. The two are tied together, and the reason for that, Rox, is because in bin tracking, when we set up the bins, sorry, I didn't realize this, we have the items in here, A1900B, and I've got a quantity in the bin, a quantity in IC, and we keep the serial number as part of the bin. So within the location, we have items within the bin, and within the bin, we can keep track of the serial numbers, and all the serial numbers are recorded in here against those items, including the 5 that we added with that recent PO receipt. And it's saying because the IC stock count is IC and not bin stock count, it's not allowing me to add the quantity because it's assuming these cereals are in the bin, which is what this company's been configured as, is having the serialized item within a bin. So maybe I can just address the question, if there's something you were looking to see in terms of recording the physical stock count for a serialized item.
Yeah, while we're waiting for that, Rob,
Mm-hmm.
Tracy asked about scanning serial numbers rather than auto-generating. So I think I know what her question is about, because they receive serialized goods in when they purchase them, and then they ship them out later and want to track which customer got them. So the auto-generate is if you're generating your own serial numbers in Sage 300, i.e. the products don't come with them, or you're putting your own serial numbers on them and printing a label, which we can do and stick on each one as they come in or go out of the warehouse. But you can also scan, like you showed, the serial numbers coming in, and if you had a bunch of boxes with serial numbers on them, you'd scan the item and the serial number. Now we have barcodes that support both in one barcode scan, right? I don't think we got into the detail of the different types of barcodes, but there are barcode standards now which you can have the item number and serial number and expiry date all in one barcode to save scanning. So we would scan those in, and when you ship out the order, you would scan in which serialized item went on which order, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, so what Will's referring to is in inventory barcode, we have the ability to support different formats that have additional information in them. One of the ones that's becoming more popular is something called GS1, where you can add your own segments, like a best before date, a packaging date, a due date, production date, things like that. GS1 is traditionally used for food items where you've got lot numbers as well, but you can incorporate a serial number. HIBC also supports serialized numbers. So essentially the scan can pick up both the item number and a serial number on one barcode. So you don't have to create two separate barcodes, one for the serial number, one for the item number. A more advanced format will allow you to embed the serial number with the item number and a product description and a date field as part of the barcode.
Right. Or
So
the items that you're buying. HIBC, I think, tends to be the healthcare industry, right, or medical devices industry.
Exactly.
The GS1
That's right.
standard is becoming more common, like you said, in food and other industries. But if you're scanning the product in as well, it can recognize and put that information in the right fields in Sage 300, right? If it's already scanned with a GS1.
That's right.
And those barcodes could be a long 2D barcode, or they can be the 3D kind of similar look and feel to a QR code, correct?
Yeah. What I'll do very quickly here, I don't generally do PowerPoints just to save time, and I prefer to just dive into the product, but I'll show you quickly what we're referring to here. So this is an example of a GS1 where we're incorporating lot numbers, dates, and other information about the item. And there are different segments here where we're recording item information. Okay, so it's a 128 barcode format, but it's a GS1 label that's got additional information built into it.
Right.
And that's a GS1 type, and then there's other ones. This is more of an HIBC that has lot and different information on the labels. And this just gives you more information about the item when you do one scan.
Yeah, it saves time, and obviously these products need more information.
Yeah.
While we're here, do you want to show some of the example devices so people know? So one, you can use the tools on your desktop, but here's some example of wireless devices.
Yeah, so these are Zebra is the manufacturer. They're famous for their thermal printers, which are handy for generating barcode labels with adhesive plasticized labels. And they've recently bought Symbol and Motorola, the combined company. And so all of these handhelds are now developed by Zebra. And these are Android devices that we're showing here. So you can see the interface is slightly different from, I showed you the Windows interface, which is this interface. That's for running on Windows devices. This is the interface when you run on Android devices. We also support iOS devices, Apple tablets and smartphones. And you can see they look a lot like a smartphone device, but they've got a keypad down below. And when you go in, you're looking at this kind of information as you're scanning the items, and then you actually use the camera on the phone, so this is a traditional smartphone where you're just using the camera to scan the label, as opposed to a more industrial device which is optimized for scanning and has better battery life. But both
built-in scanning engine so much faster, right?
Yeah. So this is the type of device that we're talking about when we talk about some of the newer devices. And these, they're $700 US, not $2,000 or $3,000. So they're quite cost effective these days. I mean, smartphones, when you look at the smartphones, they're over $1,200, $1,300 now. So this is actually cheaper than most of the smartphones out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the simple devices we've been looking at, the TC20s and TC25s, like you said, $800. I've seen them online in Canada. You add an extra battery and a warranty and a few other features. It might be closer to 1,000, but certainly not the 3,000 plus we used to have to look at in the Windows devices. And I'll just mention Windows mobile operating systems are being discontinued. Some versions have been discontinued by Microsoft. Some will be this year and some more in the next year or so. So that's why we're focused on, for example, Android devices. They're lower cost because of lower operating system cost, and just the higher quantity of devices running Android out there has pushed the cost down. So it's a standard Android operating system, and they run very well. They're ruggedized in this case with the built-in scanning engines, much faster than using a phone, although I've got the app on my phone. If anybody wants to talk about some of these devices and of course the product, I have lots of info, so we can chat about it. After the fact, you can just send me a note, and we'll be following up with everybody. But I think, Rob, we gave a pretty good overview of what's possible to extend your Sage 300 out from just the standard back office desktop, stop pushing paper and rekeying info. Some of the savings on accuracy and time saving in the warehouse, especially if you're shipping goods that have, a spoil date or, require the tracking of lots and serial numbers accurately to which client on which order. It's a relatively inexpensive way to add this feature to your Sage 300. Or even if you just wanted to do it, like you said, on a desktop or a laptop with a plug-in barcode scanner,
Wow.
we have that option as well.
You don't have to bend over or anything? No.
So if there are
Sorry
no
about
other,
that. I just muted everybody. We're getting some feedback. Sorry, Rob. So
yeah, no problem
if
at
there
all.
are questions, I'll take control here. I'll just put my info back up on the screen, Rob, if that's okay.
Yep, absolutely.
And let me go back to my PowerPoint here. There we go. So you can just give us a call here at the office if you have questions, 613-742-6565, or email me, will@da.ca. I can walk you through the details of both of these products. If you got questions about how you set up this and that sort of thing, we've done it with other clients. As I said, a very cost-effective way to implement this kind of solution, even if you just want to start on a mobile laptop with a barcode scanner attached to the USB port or a wireless one. You could walk around the office with a card or an Android tablet or something and do it as simple as that way, but really increase your accuracy, speed up the time, have better visibility with what's actually in the warehouse, what's been picked, what's been received without having to wait for somebody to manually update the system after the fact. So what we tend to call live inventory is available relatively cost effectively with your Sage 300 system. So I want to thank everybody for coming. We're just a few minutes before the top of the hour. I'm sure there's more questions that will come, but as I said, we'll send out an email with the recording of this demonstration, and you're welcome to give us a ring at the office, and we can help you go through it. So thank you, Rob, for going through it. We covered a lot in a short period of time, but I hope it gives everybody a taste. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's great. We didn't mention the electronic signature capture with Sales
Yes.
Anywhere, so people are aware that that is possible as well to verify delivery. But as Will said, we're happy to follow up with any questions or follow-up presentations as required.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. I did have that in my notes. So on the handheld device, if you're shipping an order or creating a shipment and an invoice for an order, the handheld device in Sales Anywhere, you can take a signature. It'll add it to a Crystal report form that's like your standard invoice or shipment form that we can create. It downloads it to the device, and you can email it right there to the client. We also have a way to pull it back in and attach it to the order or the shipment or the invoice in Sage 300 using another product that we didn't show today, but Orchid stock management link. So we've gone through that process with people at Orchid and with AutoSimply. So there's a lot of options here. Just give us a call and see what it can do, and we'd be happy to have a discussion. So without further ado, I'll give you a couple minutes back at the top of the hour. I really appreciate everybody's time, and I hope you found it interesting. Well, we are having another webinar, and the next webinar in our series will actually be on, I think it's Wednesday, June 5th. It's going to be showing the Sage Alerts and Workflow product. So we've had to delay it a little bit to get our presenter back, but you'll see an email about it. So I hope you can attend that one. And again, any more information about this one, please join us. Thanks and have a great day, everybody.